Check 1, 2, 3, baby. We are back on Calling All Beings. I'm your host, DJ, along with my illustrious colleagues who I missed like crazy. It's only been a week since I've seen these two. We're talking about the co-creator, the co-conspirator, the technical director, the executive producer of the joint, Monet Nathan.
Yeah, what's going on, man? My title gets longer every episode. I love that. It's fantastic. Yeah,
we got add-ons.
I don't know. There's not enough space on the screen for all of the. Yeah, love it.
We're gonna add. I'm gonna get the ticker going later when you're not looking, Nathan. And anyway, the love of cab life right here. The woman who inspires us, fills us with information, and keeps us going. A study of UAPs. Also known as the host of Deb's Data Dojo. Put some hands together for Deb.
Hello, everybody. So happy to be here. Looking forward to Creative Genius.
How's it going, girlfriend? I know, yeah, we're about to bring on a real genius right here. Thank you for hooking us up with Science Bob. I got to tell people that Deb is making things happen behind the scenes. She's making moves. She's like that character from Heat that was working in the junkyard with all the pit bulls. Mm-hmm. Anyway, just like that. There's always room for a Heat reference, right? I know our next guest knows that. He actually is a director of a full motion video called The Ariel Phenomenon. This brother's from a neighboring state close to me where I went to college in Massachusetts. He's a tall brother. He's a good-looking brother. He's got nice hair. And guess what? He's 12 days younger than me. Put your hands together for Randall Nickerson!
Woohoo!
Oh, man. You're 12 days older than me. All right, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
So respect your elders, brother. Okay? Okay. I'm going to tell you guys real quick, before we get into this. So I called this gentleman. He was kind enough to give me his contact details when we were having dinner after the anomalous symposium put on by James and Jay in Nueva York City, my home state there. And I did call Randall, and it took him a couple of weeks. And all of a sudden, I'm getting ready to go sleep, but phone rings over in England, and it is Randall Nickerson. And it's so exciting, any of you in the UFO universe that get a call from this gentleman are going to be excited. And we had a great conversation that covered a whole wide range of topics. So it's such a pleasure to meet you and speak with you, Randall.
Same. No, I think it's appropriate times for having these conversations. It's really.
It is. There's a lot going on, and whenever you want to get into that as a topic, we will get into it. But in the meantime, the thing that we discussed. Hi, Julie Farrell is in the chat right there. Jules of the Wood from yeah, she's saying welcome, Randall. Hell yeah. And she's taking care of us in the chat, so be kind to Jules or she'll throw you out of there. Just kidding. But anyway, Randall, what I wanted to ask you, and I may have even asked you this on the phone to start off with, is there something that happened in your life that made this come to the forefront of your creative process in your creative mind?
Yes, but I'd like to leave it at that.
Okay.
I mean,
were they mantids? I'm just kidding.
Well, I think just it doesn't take much, actually, to be honest with you. If you really explore nature, explore this world, that there are still a lot of mysteries and a lot of things we don't understand. That's including up in the skies, under the oceans, everywhere. Part of this whole balloon phenomenon is kind of interesting. I've been following it, and it just strikes me how many people don't even know what happens in the night sky, like
Right.
normal things, because most of the population lives in light polluted areas. Anyway, I'll stop talking.
No.
Go off the scripts
No,
about-
that's great.
But
No, that's what we're looking for. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I think part of I think this is the job of the government and the military, is to help people understand what actually happens up in the sky that are normal phenomena, so people can actually tell the difference between something that shouldn't be there.
I think you've just characterized what, if you were to take almost all of UFO Twitter, you characterized it for everybody, that's what their feeling is about disclosure. That's the whole thing. Let me turn you over to the capable hands of Money Nathan.
Thanks, DJ. Yeah, Randall, I just want to say a couple of things before I ask a question. One, the movie is fantastic, and I just wanted to thank you for the many years of time I know that it took to get that done, to get all that footage, to get the approvals. It was a labor of love, and that came out in every scene of that movie. I was moved to tears. It was incredibly moving, powerful, and I really want to thank you for that. Something struck me about the testimony of the children, and I have two kids, and I was talking with them, took them to dinner the other night, and my youngest, who's 12, was just sort of giving me all this information. I'm just kind of staring at him, and he just keeps on talking, and it just sort of struck me, kids are kind of they're very much an open book, and there's something really sacred when a child is willing to tell you something and to just kind of give you information. They're inviting you into that space, and I wonder how did the testimony of these children from Ariel impact you and your crew as you were kind of putting this film together? What kind of impact did it have on you?
It's just striking to watch this archival footage. There's a lot of it. That was the first thing that struck me, and then when I started to meet them as adults, I think that's when I really it set in on a different level with me, because they were telling the same exact story, even though a lot of these people hadn't seen their interviews. Were not even a lot of these interviews have never been seen still to this day. And that yet they told exactly the same story. That was it makes me think, one of the things that I did in this film was to get opinions on the early interviews of the children on body language and all that kind of thing. I had some really good people look at that and come back with, they're telling the truth. So there's going to be a paper coming out about that from those a group of people pretty soon that we're going to make public. But it's just very telling. Just on that level, on a body language, truthful statements by professionals that's what they do. I was struck routinely in this story by many of the individuals. And thank you for the credit for this film, but I got to give it to the witnesses and the people that were there for this story, because I did the research, figured out the story, did all the, I did a lot of hard work, but they took the risk, and they were there. I know a lot of people notice it, but every part of that film is first person witnesses. There's no second person or third person. It's all only people that were either witness to that event or directly involved. Because I couldn't come in as an outsider to say, yeah, this is what happened. No, they could tell it far better than I could. And that's, I guess, one of the amazing parts about this movie is there was so much material that I could do that my crew, when I got a crew around halfway through the film, because I couldn't do it alone, I figured that out. They were amazing. The crew also deserves a lot of credit.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was certainly there is a degree of editorialization that happens just in the composition of the film. But to your point, there was not a heavy-handed editorialization, and I really liked that. I liked that the footage was, it's just here it is, and you, the viewer, are going to interpret this as you will. But because so much of it was vulnerable, was very personal. I think that invites the viewer to into that intimate space, right, into those intimate feelings. And it explores, it touches on the aspect of sort of trauma, both on an individual and public level, and how we process that as a culture. And I wonder to what extent, if you can even share this, is there trauma still permeating that area, the school, the legacy of that event in Ruwa? Like, is it still something that is present in that community?
Oh, yeah, I would say so. It's funny because people around Africa know about this event and they, speak about it still to this day. And so there's trauma from many different for many different reasons, and not necessarily bad reasons. Just like worldview shattering is a trauma. Your worldview shatters, and you realize there's another piece to this picture that nobody ever taught us. That kind of changes history a little bit. Actually, it makes you look at history a little different. But that's a trauma in itself. I think in different people are at different levels of wherever they're at. I'm in my own process. You're in your own process. We're all in our own process with trauma. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a major event that occurred there that affected hundreds of people's lives. And because it wasn't just the school, there were other witnesses in other locations that what they saw, they'll remember for the rest of their lives. So
absolutely,
just the way it is.
That's what I'm thinking about. But I got to pass it over to Debs because we got to let her get at you, and then I'll have my chance.
Well, my question actually is sort of about that traumatic response. Also, it's sort of, I wanted to know, having made the film, and it's because we're always concerned about not exploiting experiencers, at least I am, you know, did the people coming forward feel like it was cathartic and helpful to come out and be able to just let people know what happened? Did they feel like there was a positive experience with coming out and having the film done?
I think so. Underneath, I believe that. Most of them have said that to me. On the off the record. But I think initially when the media went over there in 1994, and they got so much, they felt. I still think like the majority of those students feel like they were taken advantage of in that situation, which I can understand because they got all the press and they didn't get any help because nobody knew what to do really or how to work with these children after the fact. But at the same time, if they didn't interview those kids at that time, this story would never have been out. So it's kind of I understand, and it's not easy for anybody to go through something like this. And I felt that through this, and I still feel that. I feel responsible for these people's lives, in a way. As a storyteller, I feel like it's no small deal for me to be telling their stories and understanding what that is, what that's like to all of a sudden have your private life public, especially when it's something that's been kept really secretive for the most part. I mean, in this event, a lot of people knew about it. The parents everybody was very well informed. So it's a little bit of different in that way, but yeah, I think the most horrible thing that I've ever seen, and I'm sure you all have seen this over the years, is when these people get attacked. it's just, it's hard enough to have gone through something like this, and then to have people laugh at you or whatever. It just adds to the trauma, to be honest with you.
I thought you were going to say the most horrible thing you'd seen was the way I attacked the fried pickles at the table when we were at the barbecue restaurant. So I'm really glad that wasn't among them.
No, that wasn't it. Sorry.
Good.
It's up there though. It's definitely.
It's hot.
Yeah,
No, it's not. I hope not.
Pretty high. Yeah.
So
You can't unsee some things, you know.
It was a fun night, I have to say. That was a really
it really was
good time.
Yeah.
So much camaraderie. I'm going to go off road here for a second, Randall, and I'm going to go back to Deb's and say, Deb, if you were, as a mental health professional, if you were going to engage with one of these kids and sit down in a session, what would maybe be your couple of opening questions for them, or how would you get dialogue going with one of these kids that appear to be traumatized, since you're in this business?
Well, the thing that I think is 100% most important, not just for children, but for anyone with trauma, is validation. So you're not going to try to say, "Are you sure you saw that?" Or, "Are you imagining it?" You're just going to let them tell their experience. And, whether or not you believe needs to be left out of the situation. It doesn't matter. They believe it and they need to process it. But the next step is then to deal with the symptoms, not so much like the cause of the symptoms. And that's what treatment should entail. So,
No,
do you want
I'm
specific questions? I don't know. Like, I
No,
think it's going to take more than just one or two questions. It's going to be a conversation. I've had people, by the way, I've had clients tell me experiences, and I just let them tell me. And then they don't have that secondary trauma where they're walking away feeling like an idiot for telling someone.
Right. Yeah, I know. I've heard of it in the Bigfoot world. I've heard wives that had experience and husbands say, "I don't believe you." Even when they were like at the same campsite, but the husband was off, and then they come back and the wife says, "Oh my God, this happened," and they're like, "I don't believe you." And so, you guys that hear Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio with Vic Cundiff, he's very, he really tries to counsel people like that, because he feels very strongly that you shouldn't tell somebody they didn't see something or experience something. And if they look like they're really scared, something probably happened, But we're not going Bigfoot yet, Randall, so don't worry.
Well, I think, you're right on there, Deb. And I think, like, I did some training. I was in psychotherapy way before this film. And, one of the things is, whatever their story, listen to it, because the truth comes out over time. It doesn't matter. Like, over time, I mean, I had the advantage of doing this film, of knowing certain things right before I even met anybody. Like, I was connecting dots, figuring out who was their friend, who was their family. I had to do that. It's funny. I know these kids better than most people I know.
Wow.
But so when I got to the interview place, thank you, Deb, because you're right on with everything you said. That's
she's a pro, man. She's a pro.
Yeah.
That's what.
No, I respect you for doing that kind of work.
Thank you.
If I wasn't doing films, I'd be doing that.
She's a blessing to the community and the show.
Still help. You can still help, Randall. I'll tell you how.
I still got some years. No, I would like that, Deb. I'd actually appreciate any way I can be of help, particularly to these types of individuals, because it's a hard row, and everybody's different. People process it differently. Their families, how does their family, their relationships? It's a complex thing. We're just really beginning to understand and take seriously. So I'd be interested in helping there.
You got to meet Professor Mack, right? You filmed him, right? What was his? I was kind of like interested in what his take. What were private conversations that you had about his what he took away from the kids, because when he's speaking with them, he can't show a certain amount of emotion, right? When he's interviewing them, he has to be very clinical in the way that he speaks with them, so you're not tainting the jury. You're
Correct.
getting their story. But so, is there anything that you'd like to share relative to your discussions with John Mack about his interactions with these kids?
I think shock. I think there's some moments that they're not. Actually, I think there's one in the film, because he had been researching this before he even got to Ariel, and what really brought him to this was this doesn't have a clinical explanation, and the man had done dreams, nightmares, addiction. I mean, he's written books on this stuff, papers and papers. The guy was a genius, to be honest. And he, in all his work and time of 50 years in the field, had never seen anything quite like this when he was introduced to it. And it didn't behave like psychopathy or what do you call it? All the
like hysteria or something.
Everything in the DSM 4 or 5 at the time, DSM 4, I believe. So, yeah, I think he had just started to travel around the world to get other stories outside of the United States. It was just, I think, confirmatory to him that this is not just this is a widespread phenomenon, and it is global in every single country. So I think that's, I gotta say, he's one of the few people I've met where I'm like, wow, this he's way outside my boundaries as far as his scope of intelligence and knowledge. And I'm not trying to, what do you call it? So it's just as an acknowledgement as another human being, I recognize in him a level of genius that was like, wow, he's thinking on another plane.
Randall, as somebody who's never met him, when I watched the film and I saw him, I found him to be extremely approachable. The look on his face, the way that his attention, I was like, that's a guy that I would talk to and open up to. So I could see how he would resonate with the kids that are of these very, very diverse backgrounds. I think they felt comfortable talking to him because that's what I felt. Nathan, did you feel that way when you were looking at Professor Mack?
I mean, absolutely. That's one of the things that I felt almost kind of a sadness in the film, because you're watching John Mack at his best, and you know that he's no longer with us, and you feel this tremendous sense of loss, that we have lost this incredible intellect and person. He had this capability to create space with a person that was sacred and powerful and meaningful. Something that I think the film really encapsulates, and it hits me very hard because you don't see it very often, is that authenticity, that presence to another human being, right? That you are there with them in that moment, and that's such a rarity now. We're really accustomed to what is in it for me, and in this exchange, how do I come out on top? That was not happening at all in the film, and as a result, you can see the healing that is happening in that community through those kinds of open, honest exchanges.
Yeah, and he was, he spent 20 years working with children, so he knew how to create that environment. Kids are totally different than dealing with adults. And I'm no expert by any means with that. It's just I do respect that he came onto that scene with an awful lot of education and clinical experience to be able to do that. It's even funny because he was working on this topic. There's sometimes where he has he'll have a leading question, and sometimes he would use the leading question to try to throw somebody off. That's part of that's how he would do it, how other Bud Hopkins would do the same thing, just to validate that that was the truth. So, and you see that in the interviews, he'll throw something out there like buzzing sound, was it a da-da-da? And the kid's like, no, that was like a fluke. Like, it's actually pretty brilliant because it shows the autonomy, I guess you could say, of each of these individuals. And that's the other stunning thing that I noticed in the archival is they're not looking at each other to make sure we're on the same story, on the same page. You know, that doesn't happen. So every individual had their own perspective, and they're all different places on the playground, and just a very interesting. It's a I hate to say this, but you look at it like a crime scene, and that's kind of like I'm coming from being a filmmaker and going into investigative journalism. That's really what happened, and it took my my editor to snap me out of it. He's like, dude, you're not thinking creatively anymore. You've gone too far down the investigative journalist hole because you just want more information, and you want to put the puzzle pieces together even more, even though I'd already done it. I'm still not done. I'll still get new information, and I'm like, I know where that goes. You know, you plug in these little pieces of like, how does this fit, or doesn't it fit? It may not fit. It may not. It may steer you in a different direction to look at a different thing. So that was kind of a process of going back to creative, very different parts of your brain.
And Nathan, did you have something more? Or do you want to pass it on to Debs?
Well, I wanted to ask if you could reflect a little bit about the legacy of this story, because we all know in our experiences that the way we interpret our experience, the story we tell ourselves, you know, it changes over time, and it changes significance over time. And I get the sense that this story being told now is the right time to tell it, even though it had power and significance before. So what do you see as the legacy going forward for this story for the world?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought of that.
That's why we hired him.
Good move. Yeah, I think it's probably the only case I'm aware of where so much video was taken at the time, at least in that time period. I think the story touches on pretty much almost every aspect of this phenomenon, from them seeing it in the sky, behaving strangely, doing weird things, and then all of a sudden seeing it come down and these creatures come out. Pretty stunning. But all the phenomena that they talk about, a lot of it is not in the film. And the reason why is because probably most people would not understand what it meant, because they're like subtle details that are really astounding.
Do tell.
The way they moved, certain descriptions about their bodies, parts, neck. Yeah, it's there's so much more than what was in this film. We started out with a rough cut that was over 3 hours, and it was good. And we're like, you know, everybody's telling us, no, you got to get it down to close to an hour and a half, or it's not going to happen. So I really would love to get the rest of this story out at some point for sure. I'm not quite sure how to do that because I'm still paying for this one in a big way. But yeah, I really, because I do feel the legacy of the story is that there's so much to it, that there's so much data, and not just from the kids. You know, that's the other hidden story really at this point, is what else was going on, who else had this on their radar, all that stuff. That's, I mean, at the end of the day, really, that's kind of what like solidified it for me. It was like, okay, yeah. I mean, people that didn't even know these children, people that didn't even know that country,
Mm.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, did any of the kids report that these beings had combination skin, like I'm afflicted with, the dry and then the oil? I'm just kidding. No, let me pass it to Debs, and then I've got another question for you. Go ahead, Debs.
Right. So first of all, I think we would all love if you did a sequel with the extra footage, even if you just called it extra footage. We would all watch that, just so you know. Like we would
Yeah.
be all about that. And if you put it on YouTube and that's how you get it out there, it would get watched, just letting you know. But
I
I
know.
wanted to comment. We know that there's been a lot of other schools that have had
Mhm.
encounters also. Have these experiencers ever spoken with each other and shared like notes, past notes on their encounters? I know Australia, for instance, had a major incident with lots of witnesses. Or have you even done that yourself? Just tried to compare notes with the
Oh yeah.
encounters at these other schools?
Yes. For particular primary schools, I went to Wales in Broadhaven and went to the school, which was odd. I have to say, like on my drive out to Broadhaven, I was like, God, these roads are so similar to the roads in Zimbabwe. Like,
Wow.
it's a remote place by the ocean, a little different. And none of the witnesses wanted to speak with me. So I was stalking them. That's what they said. And I did talk to three of them, and I interviewed one of the teachers that was at there, and I also collected all their drawings, which is in the Historical Society in Broadhaven, because I wanted to compare those photographs. Broadhaven to me was pivotal. Westall in Australia, because it was a different. There wasn't the. It was just different. And I commend Sean for doing a great job on that. And he wanted to talk to me at the time, and I was just like, I can't even talk to anybody. I'm so focused on this. And but I did talk to the three witnesses in Broadhaven, and they said, look, we came out public a long time ago, and it hasn't done us any good. And they're in their late 40s at this point, early 50s, and they're like, it happened. But there's no upside to speaking about it at this point. And I hope they do at some point, because I think those witnesses have something to say. But I found, like, a lot of times I see this over and over and over. I don't know if you guys have, where people will witness something like this and they won't talk to each other too much about it.
Yes.
Yes. They actually don't. Disturbing on some level, and I think that's it. I think it's such a personal experience. I'm not quite sure how to explain that, but I find that there's a lot less conversation than people would imagine.
I have a hypothesis about it.
I think
my hypothesis is that perhaps it's scarier to have it confirmed.
That's true.
Interesting.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, with the Bigfoot experiencers, there have been groups where one person didn't know the other hunter very well. Maybe they had gone out for the first time and never talked again. And there have been others where they were close friends, and while they talked again, there would be one who would refuse to talk to the other about it. So it's very common, just confirmation of what you just said, but from that, a related genre. So
sure. And then I get, once it's confirmed, then, oh my God, what does that mean?
I think that's it, right? It's so destabilizing to.
Yes.
Nailed it, Deb.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yep.
Because I've been amazed watching the kids not talk to each other about it. And I'm like, I think, and not just that case, several other cases, because part of the process of making this film had to do with going to Wales, going to the government, going to militaries, talking about everybody, talking about what was going on at the time. Like, people have no idea how much actually went into this film that didn't get into the film. but I think I did a pretty good job of like sussing everything out. But there's a lot more to share. That's what I'm like, you know,
Damn right,
I feel,
you did a good
feel
job.
like, oh my God, after all this work, there's so much more to share. And I, you know, trying to get it out there has been tough, to be honest with you. I feel like in a weird way I've been sidelined by the mainstream in some weird way. I don't quite understand it, but anyway.
Interesting.
Time and truth always wins.
Yeah.
Well, for example, people didn't think you would get this film out, and you proved that wrong. So now it's just a matter of time before you get the rest of the material out and the rest of the story out, and you'll prove them wrong again.
I'm going to be an old man by that time, guys.
Oh, please. Please. You're 9 days younger than me. Come on.
DJ will always be older, so.
So you're April 7th, April 8th,
No, I'm
right?
sorry. I'm March 18th, and you're March 30th, right?
Yeah.
So 12 days, right?
Nice.
So
68.
That's right. It's Summer of Love, man. Come on, the Monterey Pop Festival. Let's go. So what I was going to ask you is, beyond what the kids reported to you that was communicated to them, do you have a working hypothesis about why they made that landing? Does it comport exactly with what the kids told you was communicated to them and that young lady so eloquently repeated on camera? Or do you think there was another reason? Or was it to check the oil, Nathan? Could it have been as simple as, you know, checking the air and the landing gear? No, but all kidding aside, do you have a hypothesis on that? Their purpose?
I do. So so I do believe that communication session, whatever happened there, I do believe that really happened.
Sure.
The
But
reason
is it broader than that?
Was it broader than that?
Yeah.
I just want, the reason I believe that is because there were other people that also had that experience, other students who admitted it to me, but wouldn't go on camera about it. That's why I know that whatever occurred in that moment when they had direct eye contact, that close encounter, if you will, that there was something communicated to quite a few people in that moment. You know, the broader thing, to be honest with you, is human beings are wild animals, and we don't realize we are, because we've never been approached by a more superior species. And maybe we did, and maybe that's why there was, you know, these major experiences, you know, throughout our history when they have interacted with us. So my feeling, it seems like, in a way, a domestication program, in a sense, to sort of tame, because you can't grow and work with another species until you are not going to freak out with that other species. And this is a huge jump, a huge gap to bridge between a high, this is my opinion. I'm just want to make it like my theory, my working feelings about this are, you know, they're going to engage with us to try to get us used to them slowly, very, very slowly. And I just don't see the, I see a scientific interest. I see, you know, one of the things I did was like, let's go look at it from a wider perspective. What's their perspective? Right. There's a guy doing a film about that right now, Dean Alito. It's fantastic. And taking that perspective and how they may be looking at us and where we're at. And if they can get to places like ours, obviously they've been around for an awfully long time, which makes the gap much bigger, which is going to make the fear even greater. So that's I do feel like this is a process of
desensitization,
getting us used to what's out there. We're so wrapped up in our own planet and our own God. you know,
Our friend Matt, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Our friend Matt Monroe has a tangential question. Then I'm going to come back to Nathan and ask the question to him. Matt Monroe wants to know, do you think the landing had to do with the uranium mine near the Ariel school? Hi, Matt.
Hey, Matt, thanks for the question. Yes. Well, let me put it this way. That wasn't my interest. It was brought up to me. And I located there's two locations actually, but to me, it really didn't matter. If that, I mean, the location, granted, we're dealing with things that appear to be very interested in our scientific cutting edge and what we're doing with very dangerous things. Very obvious that they're watching that. Was that the reason for Ariel? Maybe they were doing something else and said, let's give these kids an experience. Maybe. I never took it as a priority because of the nature of the story was so much deeper that the reasons didn't matter why they were there. It was the fact that they were there, you know, and from everybody that witnessed it. I'm not talking from I can't argue with these people, like even the adults and other witnesses that saw this from different perspectives. You know, I'm not going to change their minds. They know. And that's the other thing. A lot of these people they don't have the light pollution that we have here. Those skies are dark. They don't have the radar coverage we have here. It's a very different world, Africa, and it's huge.
Beautiful place, man.
Beautiful place. So beautiful.
I've been there.
I wish it was a little bit safer, but have you been there?
I have, yeah.
Wow, where'd you go?
I was in the military, Mali, Niger, Algiers, a lot of trans-Saharan Africa, just because of the nature of my work. But yeah, I'm so glad that I did have that experience. Other friends of mine went to Senegal a lot, but I didn't get to go to Senegal, unfortunately.
I always tell people, like, we don't need boot camp. You just drop them off in Africa, give them 6 months. If they make it back, they're trained.
Boot camp. You got that right. You do your jungle survival there and be running to the Maasai warriors saying, "What do I do?" Let me. So I think Nathan and Debs want to tackle that question as well. Thank you, Matt Monroe, because Matt was amongst the group that had dinner with us that we had the pleasure to meet in New York City. So Matt ate with us. He had a cool ball cap on. He kind of looked kind of cool. So yeah, so there he is, Science Bob in the house, yo. Nathan, and then we'll go to Debs with the same question. But Nathan, did you have a feeling about what you thought their purpose was for coming to that place at that time and interacting with those kids? Was that happenstance? What's your whole take on that?
I think my perspective on this is that we can't think about it as in terms of that it happened in the past. I think that it's happening in a way. It's happening now, right? That there's a funny relationship we have with time, and some of the children recount how time was a little strange in the moment of that experience, but I think more broadly, it was like this injection of an engagement that is teaching us something now. It was planted then, but it is flowering now. And there are those in the world who are seeing it, who are feeling seen, because it is validating what they have experienced. And the power of that validation is contagious, right? And so, to Randall's point as well, we aren't ready, and it requires time, in the way we know time. It requires a very personal sharing of the experience. This is not something, and we know this, right? We know this because we have so many people who said, I've experienced this, and everyone's like, whatever, but it requires a relationship. If you know that person and they say, DJ, I experienced this, and you know me, like, it hits different than it does if you just read it somewhere. It's harder to ignore. And I think that this is part of that story, the unfolding of what's happening now. The seeds were planted then.
Nathan, do I see in your statement there, that they saw this happening now then? When they landed there, they saw this was going to happen. They projected this.
I think
No.
in a way. No, I think in
okay.
a way, because I think that their relationship with time is different than ours. I think that they understood that it would have this rippling effect on us, over our experience of time in our throughout our societies.
So, no, you're absolutely. I mean, they obviously have to look at time completely differently because of the fact that we are forced to view time based on change that occurs not only within us but without us and what we see every day. But for them, maybe not the case. Deb, we're going to get that question to you, and then we're going to go to Julie with her question. So,
Yeah,
what did you have, Debs?
Yeah, a couple things. One on the time thing, that's a really interesting perspective. I've had similar thoughts in general that if we were to put every experience and be honest about every experience together, we might be getting a message, and they might be messaging us in a way that is very different than how we send messages. Like if people were honest about experiences and piecing things together, we probably would have gotten really far actually in understanding that message. But unfortunately, we're still working out the kinks on that system. But um, I have to say, to answer the question of what happened, that it stands out to me the comment about the flute, because when I was a child, I was in Germany, and we used to watch a very particular play called The Pied Piper. And when you mention the sound, I really hone in on that, and I wonder. I do think that there is a level. I don't want to be an alarmist, but there isn't a level of some kind of manipulation to humans that happens. And I think that it's maybe the purpose is beyond our understanding, but I am inclined to go with the notion of science, you know. But I wish you could expound a little bit on the sound. I know that you've mentioned it before in another interview and then kind of didn't want to talk about it that much. I don't know if you're comfortable telling us about that sound that
Me?
they heard. Yeah.
Me?
Mm. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't come from them. It doesn't come from the Ariel kids. It comes from other people. Like the oscillating humming sound. That's pretty common. The mechanical, like some of the ways they describe it, is pretty brilliant because it's really hard to describe a sound that we have no reference for. And then the high pitch sound. If you hear that high pitch sound, you're in trouble. That's just the truth. So, and I personally, I think this is very much a scientific operation. I don't think these things are evil. I just think we're actually very dangerous to them because we are, again, I go back to that idea. I know it may sound crazy to people, but we are technically really wild animals when we're put in those kind of circumstances. So the sounds are actually really important. And the other one is the silence that follows this phenomena, the silence that occurs at different points, and the lack of sound, I think, is really pretty incredible too. But that's what I'm not, there are other incidents about those particular sounds that you can find. And it was interesting because, it goes on. Just the sound was an interesting part of this whole experience for them too.
It's
Not only were they
science.
seeing something strange and feeling something strange, but they were hearing something very strange too.
I think the science fiction guys have captured this the best. I mean, these sounds that people describe are what I've heard in Star Trek and other science fiction films. So it seems like the imagination humans have imagined what this might sound like in various as best that we could replicate it. Obviously, we're not gonna hit those ranges that these craft are probably able to hit. As you described, you could be in trouble if you're hearing it. Matt Monroe saying that he's heard a couple of different, because he's obviously new to me, but Matt has had some UAP sightings. Let me go with Julie's question, and then I think Deb wants to go to some current event talk.
Can I just say
Julie,
something about fiction?
yes, sir. Please.
Most
Yes, sir.
most great fiction comes from truth. Like, where do you think I'm not saying to you, but like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or all these different films that have just floored us. I mean, they didn't just make that up out of the blue.
They got some scoop.
Yeah,
Sure.
and that's what you do, right? When you make a fictional film, you go on this massive pre-production thing where you research what you're going to do, right? Find out stories about anything you can around the subject matter. So when you do the fictional, you're pretty right on. So that's kind of funny. Like none of this came from fiction. It came from even going back. I was watching a 1956 film on UFOs the other night. And I'm like, it's the same story. We're still talking about the same thing, the same things people are seeing, hearing, watching. And that was 1956. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Topic hasn't gone very far, has it?
Just stunning. I'm sorry. I get my personal.
No, I think we all share that to one degree or another.
Other people live with this every day, and they're fine.
Yes.
In other countries.
Yes.
They know.
No, I know. That's a whole separate discussion that.
Sorry,
I can't. No, I mean, I'll get into it, but let me take because I don't want to leave Julie out of this, and then we can go into some current events and then whatever you guys want to talk about. But she says, how are the experiencers being treated since the film? I hope they are happy about participating. So that's going to the young ladies and men that you that participated in your documentary.
Well, that's a good question. I think it's not easy. Everybody's been pretty quiet, to be honest with you. You don't see them rushing out to do interviews, and it's hard. I think it's hard, no matter who you are or no matter what you saw. Like, I think it's it was already hard for them back then. So, it's a long time. This is that a lot of people have been thinking about it. And I think probably, Deb, you're right about the confirmation. A lot of people have avoided each other for a long time because of this incident and other incidents like this. So I don't know. I wish, I have to just wish them the best with what their process they're going through. It's hard to be responsible for that process by telling, you know what I mean? I feel, I have my own feelings about it. My own, it brings up a lot of different things for me too. And it's just.
A lot of people don't want to be defined by one thing that they saw.
Correct.
And everybody wants to ask about it. And there's some of these women that you could see, I just want to live my life. I want to raise my kids, and I don't want to be defined by this event. That's right. All people want to know me for and talk to me for. I just want to be me, just be a person. And I get that, and anybody who's, the least bit empathetic can get that. But Deb wanted to go into some current events. So please, Deb, go ahead and throw out the topic that you wanted to tackle.
Okay, so we'd be kind of missing the ball, so to speak, if we didn't talk about what is going on right now with UAPs and the United States government and military. So not only am I interested in your perspective on it, but I wanted to throw out a question that I kind of threw out on Twitter today, which was, why do we think, even though NORAD has had thousands of sightings of uncorrelated targets that Ross Coulthart has spoken about for some time, because he's been chummy with some guys at NORAD, why is it all of a sudden we're shooting those targets down?
So I'll tackle that. Um, so when you talk about uncorrelated targets and they're looking at hits on what a radar, or they're looking at whatever visual sensors that they have that may be space-based sensors, and they're looking at something that they feel is not an anomalous technology, not something like what Ryan Graves saw, and something they think is made by a global power competition rival. And our global power competition rivals are Russia and China. So I'm guessing that the reason that they shot these down is because they were not UAPs. They were not something that could outperform our aircraft or our technologies. And it's just as simple as that. For like the people were asking me today, I talked to a couple of our friends from the UK. They were hypothesizing about what President Biden might or might not say. And I said, well, he's not going to say anything because to characterize it is not in his interest. To be vague and unclear specifically about what it was and what the nature, what they picked. They may have, for all we know, they may have recovered every single piece of what was shot down by now. But to do that and to confirm it doesn't, you don't give the other intelligence services a chance to be unclear and to guess about it. And that's what they want to do. This is like gamesmanship. This is chess. So you don't want to, you always have to, you know, their job is to project strength and power. And so every time you say, I don't know, we don't know what this is, we can't control it, we can't, nobody, you don't do that because that just tells Russia and China exactly what they would want to hear. So you have to keep it vague and keep them guessing. And I think that's exactly what they've done. They've seen 4 technologies that they said, hey, we can take this out of the sky with an AIM-9 or an AIM-23, whatever those was on the rails of that F-22. And they said, okay, we can take a shot, we get this. If they saw like a sphere and a cube, I don't think they were going to take a shot at that, you know, or a tic-tac, right? So that's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, what, should I talk? I'm not sure.
Yes,
where
sir.
we're at.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think like initially, like the biggest thing that happened was a power play saying, hey, we got it. We got whatever, you know, in our skies, we got it. Right. That was the first kind of statement that was made by it. What's interesting about we're talking about spying, right? I think that's very interesting because that could lead to, well, who else is spying on all of us, right?
Well, yes, sure.
That's a doorway. I you know, initially I was like, oh, here they go. We're gonna walk back the whole thing because, you know, we don't want to freak people out. That's the, you know, their MO. So, but it also is opening doorways, I think. So we'll see. But yeah, if this was the real deal, they would not have shot at it. That would have been.
I want to throw something else at you. One of the goals that they like to be able to do is to Nathan mentioned this before about he said the word destabilizing, you know, off balancing you. And one of the things that because we have a very, very free press and our 2 global power competition rivals do not have that, they like to throw things out there. If first of all, 50% of the United States at any one time does not trust the president and or that person's entire government. So you have that. So now we're just working on that other 50% now. So our job is made a lot easier, or their job. You know, this is not the Truman era or the Roosevelt era or anything like that, where, you know, you had 70 or 80% of the country, whatever it might have been. So doing things like this causes a distrust in the government. It causes people to say, what is this? Why'd they let it float over the country before they took it down? Is this an attack from aliens? Is this Russia and China that can just float objects across our airspace. So it's a very, very good move. They're going thumbs up in Russia and China, because here you have Russia that's got egg on their face. They should have been able to take out Ukraine like a year ago, or not actually, but 6 months ago. And then you have China that's kind of trying to play both sides, but to the extent that they can make us look a little bit weak and destabilize and keep us off balance, that's a win in their mind.
I think the public trust issue that you brought up is extremely important, because we're at an all-time low, and that's not good. And I think a large reason for that is the overclassification, and that they're keeping things that they should tell their public too close to the vest. And they're, you do not want to lose the public's trust. You can't.
And we've heard that from the representatives who have spoken out following the briefings that they had, that many of them openly calling for the president to be forthright with the American people, tell the American people what we know. I think it's there were a lot of unanswered questions from what we've heard on the official line. There's been some confusing statements made from different representatives from NORAD and the DoD. We don't look like we have our act together. Let's put it that way. And to DJ's point, I agree. We want to keep our cards close to the vest. Like, that's really important. But at the same time, we don't look super competent right now either.
That was their goal. That was their goal.
To not look competent. Yeah.
That was their goal, is to make us not look competent.
I'm saying
that's what I said.
Yeah. No. The other countries. Yeah. I agree with you there. But we almost would have been better saying nothing than what we said so far, because what we said so far has actually made us look more incompetent. But large on a larger sort of perspective on this, I think, and I want to get your take on this, Randall. There is a certain degree to which acknowledging that these things are even there, whether they are air clutter, balloons, whatever they may be, it begins sort of opening the possibility space for the American public and the world as to what else is up there. And cognitively, I think that is kind of like prepping the field, so to speak, for some things that may be coming down the pipeline here. At least I think that is the case. I could be wrong.
That's very possible. I've seen balloons. It's not an abnormal thing to see if you've put enough hours up in the sky. You see party balloons in just huge groups. You occasionally will see a weather balloon. I've had one encounter with a weather balloon. One of those figures of like SpongeBob, or I forget what it was. I took photographs out my window when I was flying by it. It was just like, what is this thing doing at 6,000 feet? So yeah, balloons, all that stuff is kind of normal things. This was a different experience, a high altitude balloon with a lot of gear on it, 2,000 pounds. That's a lot. That's not something I would run into, but pilots run into, you see balloons occasionally, and it does like, oh man, if I hit that thing, I'd be in, it would cause some damage. But birds are far more a problem. So yeah, I think it opens the door to say, well, what else? And that it's funny, that movie Don't Look Up came up. Now everybody's looking up, maybe, and thinking about that space, which is not very large, as far as we go for horizontal, or we go north, south, east, and west. When you go up, it's not very. You go up 3 miles, you can't breathe.
That's right.
We're in a very small area, and we fly up to whatever 80,000 feet before where there's different layers of the atmosphere. ionosphere is fascinating to me because that's when things do crazy things because of the that you get a light show. So anyway, yeah, I'm hopeful because I think we have to address this. We really do. And it's not going to hurt us. I don't think that's what's happening here. If I'm wrong, I just don't see that. I think it's, if anything, it'll probably bring us all together on a totally different and important way.
Yeah, and so this was sort of a test right there, right? Would they attribute it to another intelligence technology, or would they say it's human technology? So you saw what the answer was. The answer was it was human technology, whether it was or not. I mean, yeah, I mean, to me, I had a conversation with another member of CAB, the UFO Thinker Frank, today, and I said, on the order of probabilities, is it impossible that we could take out another intelligence's aerial technology with one of our weapons? It's not impossible. It's less than likely that we would be able to do that based on what we know, and we don't know it all, right? Because we're not privy to the top secret info of different interactions with different aircraft and different aerial phenomenon that was from out of this world, or at least non-human intelligence, right? But on the order of probabilities, it is less than likely that we're going to shoot down a Tic Tac with an F-22 or something analogous to that. Would we all agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but if they wanted to characterize it as another intelligence, because none of us know what they actually were, what they downed, they could have, right? And we would be none the wiser. They decided not to. So that should be a little bit of a window to you UFO analyst out there, or UFO interested person, which all of us on this group are, and all of UFO Twitter is, right? That should be a window into what they're thinking. So I've said to on our show on many occasions, there's a delta between what I want them to tell us and what I think we should know, and what they think is in their interest to tell us. Those are not the same things, because in theory, my occupation, let's just say for this is not my occupation. I do actually work in government, but let's just say that I'm a UFO analyst is my occupation. So I care. Disclosure is what is my job. I want to know about that. Their job is to instill public confidence and trust. And unfortunately, what UFO interested persons don't get is it's not in their interest to tell everything what we know about UFOs and what we've captured, and we've done this and we've done that, and we're back engineering technology, and we've had these interactions, and this is what's at. They're not going to do that. It's not in their interest, because Russia and China aren't doing that. Now, if they all got together and said, collectively, we're going to get on stage at the UN and talk about it, now that's a different story. But that's not in the offing, is it?
Hey, so can I comment here real quick? I just think if we step back for a minute and look at what's going on, a couple really significant things have to be highlighted. The White House was explaining to the American public that it was not aliens. So think about that for a minute. When would we have ever imagined that the White House would even be ever have to say that, right? And then secondary, NORAD had a general saying, I can't roll out aliens. When did we ever think? Like, I was listening live when that happened, right? This is the fact that they're even telling us about these shoot downs when we know for a fact that there have been shoot downs in the past. They're telling us now. They're making it public now. Okay? That's a big deal. Something is going on.
Was it Kirby?
Well, they had to. They had to react to it because it was in the news.
Yeah. But I think it was Kirby who said, it wasn't extraterrestrial. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. Like, that's a new category now? Like, that's no longer off the table. It's exactly what you're saying, Deb. That's brilliant. Yeah. Because that's what struck me too. It's really true. Like,
right.
Is this the normalization process?
It occupies the possibility space now, whereas before it wasn't even on the table.
We have Lou and Christopher Mellon and Tom DeLonge and Alex Dietrich and Dave Fravor and all them and the New York Times crew to thank for that, because they're the ones that otherwise we wouldn't be having. I've told people, I've told
guys, man. Yeah.
Yes, and I do. I've told my friends in the UK, until you make the government move from the position that they're in, they're stuck right here. You see my desk shaking, and they're not going to move until you make them move. The reason the UK government is not moving is because they do not have a way to move them off of their position of we don't discuss UFOs. Well, guess what? Lou and Chris and all those guys in the fighter pilot said, well, guess what? Here at front page of the New York Times, had a UFO interaction. Well, now we're going to have to discuss it. Plus, they got meetings up on the Hill. So now the DOD was forced to talk about it. But what I'm saying is, as far as them disclosing what they know about it, I don't think that's happening. The reason that they're talking about it is they were forced into it as a result of people seeing these balloons and civilian agencies being aware that fighters are being launched and something was being scrambled and people saw this. And so that forced their hand. If they could have kept it secret, I'm certain they would have.
Yeah. You know, the other thing that there's a lot up there. You know, I know they talk about, you know, there's all kinds of stuff up in the sky that, you know, I've been out with my telescope and sky watching forever. And yeah, there's so much up there, and these other things, other creatures, whatever you want to call it, this other species, you know, they're not, they're very subtle, actually. It's not like they're racing around in our atmosphere all the time. And you know, that they don't travel in the way that we do either. So quick appearances and quick disappearances are just normal. So we don't even know how to do anything like that or how to address it, because once it's there, maybe for 45 seconds and then it's gone. And then the F-15s show up about, you know, 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Well,
you know,
Randall, you're a pilot.
A conflict, you know.
Randall, you're a pilot. They're not following aerodynamics. They don't need aerodynamics
Not
to
at all.
fly. That's the big discriminator. And
they create their own atmosphere around them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's done or whatever, but that's what you observe.
Yeah. I recommend people go listen to Ryan Graves' podcast. I think it's called Merged. And you're going to hear a Japan Airlines pilot there with, I don't know how many thousands. I mean, he's in the tens of thousands of hours. He's been flying for 35 years. And he'll tell you some of the... What's that?
Is that the Alaska incident?
No, he is. He talks about several different things that he's encountered flying. He's almost flown the entire ring around the world, but he's flown some incredible routes all over Asia, all over the globe, and so he tells some stories that he knows that he experienced himself, and then what's been relayed to him by other pilots. But you know, the wall. I mean, what should make Deb happy is the walls are coming down. Pilots are starting to talk about it. Something that during the time of my career, nobody talked about it. And obviously, I mean, I'm the killjoy here. Nobody wants to hear from me because I'm going to tell people what they don't want to hear. But I'm going to tell them the way the government works as I see it. And I've been in the defense industry for, I'm 55 and I've been there since I'm 23. So
I have to call, like, you know, again, like I'm sure it wasn't easy for Ryan Graves to come forward and these other people. Man, that's sacrifice, and that's doing something for the right reasons. And I have, courage. I have just an enormous amount of respect for those people for doing the right thing.
If the UK could get one Ryan Graves or one Dave Fravor, that would change everything. That person would have to know their flying career would be over on day one that they reported it. But if they got one person like that, that could get the ball rolling. But the problem is they don't have that. So their government just tells them we don't talk about UFOs when when they correspond with the Ministry of Defense.
They need to talk to their airline pilots. That's pretty much. I mean, it's kind of discussed.
Okay, I messaged. I flew with a British Airways pilot. He flew in my squadron in the early 2000s, and I know him really well, like him really well. I messaged him on LinkedIn, hey, I don't want to say his name. Hey, can you tell me, have you seen anything? Because I know if he's flying for British Airways, he's been around the world. No reply at all. And this is a guy that I like and likes me.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell you? Actually, I've messaged more than one of those. I've messaged two guys that I flew with that were in the RAF, but they came to our squadron for 4 years, and I know them really well, and they haven't responded to me. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Silence.
Humans are very we like to mimic each other, right? We're kind of herd animals in a way. We're not going to like go out on a limb if everyone else isn't going out on a limb. But I think your film, Randall, and like we're seeing with what Ryan's doing that we just talked about. I mean, it is giving people permission. They're taking the heat, basically, and Randall, you're taking some heat too, putting your own self out there in this way.
Definitely.
But you're giving permission to others to respond. And I would like to, if you could speak to any response that you've had since the film has come out, people who've connected with you, can you tell us any of those kinds of stories?
I've had a couple of people from my high school contact me because of things that they had seen and gone through. That really blew my mind. That was a few years ago. Recently, letters I've gotten, notes I've gotten and the most powerful thing, it just almost brought me to tears. I probably would have a good cry if I really sat with that letter for long. But it was, and there was more than one. And then they said, thank you for validating my experience. Dude, I can't tell you what that meant to me. And it wasn't, that's what the children at Ariel did for those people. I was part of it. My crew was, the kid, I'm not taking the responsibility. You know what I mean? But there was no better result to that movie other than that, where somebody who's alone with it, somebody who's been struggling with it, have nobody around them believing them, finally has, some kind of validation. And that's so important. No matter what you've gone through, actually.
Yeah.
Randall, without going through an exhaustive search of my brain, I count 7 high school classmates that have had sightings in the Hudson Valley wave of the 80s. 7.
Yep.
And every one of them has told me their story. And one of them has seen 2 different, most of them saw a triangle. Actually 8, now that I'm thinking of it. Let's make it 8. That's what I mean. I didn't even have to, because we live right near Indian Point Power Plant. So that Dr. Hynek, wrote about that.
Yep.
And that's in my town.
Wow.
Anyway, one person told me about a Tic Tac. She called me the other day. She was very concerned about the balloon issue, or we didn't know what it was at the time last Sunday. And then everybody else, I believe, saw a triangle other than she saw, and her family saw the Tic Tac. Actually, let me go 9. 9 people now. I'm up to 9. Sorry.
I'm going to add one. So now you got 10. A friend of a good friend of mine, Dan, his wife, Erin. I won't say anything. Sorry, I probably said too much, but that's okay. Nobody knows who they are. But she was in the Hudson Valley. She had witnessed. It went on for weeks. And she told me about it. And I'm like, oh my God! Like she was like for real, like this, And I have a lot of respect for her. She's a fashion designer and brilliant. And so anyway, but yeah, I've heard that story from witnesses' mouths. Interesting. The Hudson Valley, that was a big deal.
Yep. And I actually had my sighting during that time.
Did you?
I did.
Wow.
I had a sighting in when mine would have been like 82. Mine would have been at the beginning of it. And then other people were closer toward the end of it. But when they, Dr. Heineken there references calls coming into the Peekskill Police Department. That's, like my town. So yeah, it was something I never knew until, here I'm in my 50s and talking UFOs with high school friends. So we'd never have talked about it at the time.
That's what's funny. I had the same experience. I'm like, wow, you got to be kidding me. This is coming full circle back to high school and even earlier than that. Oh my God. And nobody said anything at the time.
Yeah. Let's go with Cabby goodbyes unless somebody has something else for Randall.
Oh, I just wanted to say before I say goodbye real quick, Whitley Strieber's experience was on the way to Hudson Valley when he did his documentary about it recently. He was driving through Hudson Valley.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. I need to talk to Whitley. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to ask him which town he was in because every time I know, I've heard of every town there. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, you want to start us off, Deb?
Yeah, sure. So to go back to what Nathan said about pieces being put in place in a different order of time and so on and so forth, your film is now a piece forever that will help people forever. Because you made that film, it is permanent and it will be treasured. So thank you so much for adding that and bringing out more on the experiencer side of the phenomenon.
Thank you.
Funny.
That makes it worth the time and effort and sacrifice that was done by not just me but many other people.
Well, we thank them too, of course. Thank you to all the Ariel school children who came out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it takes incredible courage for them to tell their story, and fate is not done with this story, in my opinion.
No, there's more to the story.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing that. And this is a film that I hope people, one, watch, but also share. It's incredibly compelling, powerful, moving. It's that's excluding the UFO aspect of it. It's just a human story that is very, very, very impactful. And I can't thank you enough, and your crew, and the school, and everyone that helped make this possible. So thank you, Randall, and we look forward to seeing what you'll be doing in the future.
Sure. I just want to say we're talking with a theater chain right now. It hasn't been solidified or anything yet, but it's very exciting because, the whole point is to get this film out so the world sees it. So, you know what I mean? It's not about money. It's not about that. It's about getting enough people to just see this so they can have a little teaser of what do you call it when you put out
like a trailer or
well, just get used to the idea of I forget what you call that.
Socialize to the idea that there's a phenomenon out there that's visiting us on the regular and it's global. It's not so. And Jules has put this up on the screen for us.
It's fantastic.
Ariel Phenomenon movie. Thank you, Jules.
Yeah, we're on Amazon, iTunes. We're moving. And yeah, we just got to keep going. And I thought I'd be done with this 5 years ago, but the fight's not over until the fight is over.
Exactly.
Thank you for not being done with it because from my standpoint, what I see when I look at you is not somebody who is in this for a money-making venture, to build his resume, to attend red carpets and look cool. You seem to me a guy who's affected by the phenomenon in one way or another, and for whatever reason that I don't need to know what that reason is. But I could tell that not only have the story of these kids touched your heart, but whatever experiences you've had has touched your heart and made an imprint on it, that you feel the need to do this and to bring this subject and get it socialized so that there is less stigma. Then maybe governments won't feel as compelled to be as close hold about it, that, okay, they're the same way that Native Americans look at Bigfoot. They're like, okay, yeah, they're out there. They're our neighbors. They're there. We leave them alone. They leave, that kind of thing. They have a relationship where it's not a something that necessarily to be afraid of. They leave us alone, we leave them alone, etc. And so maybe that's what you can create as you proliferate your artwork around the world. And I pray that you will get that done and get it into the eyeballs and into the minds of more people.
There's a lot of powerful stories out there that I've been working on, that will be next for sure, because Ariel was one, and I'm kind of focusing on a little bit of a different story, but same topic. So
Please
I'm not going
feel
to quit.
free to come back and talk about whatever projects you're doing. We don't have any money in this, but we just love to interact with experiencers and hear stories, and just bring the topic into a discussive, conversative form. That's
Yeah,
all.
I appreciate what you guys are doing. Actually, it's very. I know a lot of people appreciate it.
Thank you, Randall. Thank you for the way that you treated all of us when we saw you in New York and we met you. We just couldn't wait to have you on. So you become part of
It's such
Cab
a weird
Fam
feeling.
tonight.
Like, just no, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So thank you,
look
Mr.
forward to dinner
Randall.
in New York sometime, and love
Say
to.
that again.
I look forward to getting together in New York again sometime and
Yeah, it'd be great.
spending some time. It'd be nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to come back up there because you got meeting up with the crew afterwards is so much fun. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, some people are gonna talk about UFOs on stage, but they're gonna get to hang with a bunch of people, and that's really what I'm about. So for Randall, we'll have Randall's information in the show notes. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and then you can read whatever he gives us to put in the show notes. Will be there. So for Randall, for Debs, for Monet Nathan, this is DJ saying peace out, one love. We'll see you down the road. And as always, we're wondering what's up around the bend.